It's really quite alarming to a lot of Republicans, his refusal to say, of course, if I lose, I will abide by a peaceful transfer of power.
He's since said that if there's a clear winner, if this courts settle a contested election, that of course he will. But the premise of the question that you just played me, Jake, is the president's going to lose. I don't think the president's going to lose. The president is going to win.
It's a prediction that didn't age very well. Not only did President Trump lose, he did not accept the court-settled contested election, as you phrased it, or abide by the peaceful transfer of power.
Abiding by the law and being the party of law and order is a lot more difficult when you're losing. And as we go into an election year where crime is a dominant narrative, we're going to show you how Republicans flip-flop when convenient. They pretend to be the party of law and order, they pretend to be the party that's cracking down on crime, but we're going to show you how whenever it affects them, and especially their party leader, they're nowhere to be found. Suddenly, it's okay to make exceptions, and I think you're going to be surprised with what we found, because there is a clear pattern in some of their behavior.
Jake, I mean, I think the president has said, as I've said about this election,
Of
course, we will accept the results if the results are from fair and free elections. Every candidate in any race has a right to go to court to seek legal redress.
Of course.
If they think there's been any kind of fraud or cheating, if they think a state or a city didn't follow the rules or customary practices of their elections. I think that that's reasonable for President Trump to say. It's reasonable for any candidate for any office in America to believe.
I don't disagree, but that's not what happened in 2020. I mean, he contested it up to the U.S. Supreme Court, and then it went past that, as you know.
Let's start with January 6th. That's one of the strongest examples of Republicans suddenly turning a blind eye to crime. You had hundreds, if not thousands, of rioters attacking the Capitol, attacking police, breaking windows, smashing doors. Now, these are things that they pretend to clutch their pearls over when someone of another political affiliation does it in the street, especially over things like police brutality. They demand protesters be locked up for doing the same exact thing. Except those don't affect our democracy. Those don't affect a free and fair election. And those aren't under the auspices of changing the results of an election. And there's always a caveat when it comes to January 6th and the election. It's always, there will be a peaceful transition of power if the election was fair. But when a party makes excuses every time they lose, when they trot out totally nonsensical lies to claim the election was stolen or was unfair or rigged, they're always going to have an opportunity to use that excuse. They tried to submit fraudulent electors in multiple states. They tried to change the outcome, and they're doing the same thing in the run-up to 2024. They're building a whole framework, a whole apparatus to do the same exact thing. They're going to push the boundaries of our legal system and hope they can change the outcome. And if it doesn't work, that sets them up again for saying it was stolen. But we know it wasn't. It's not that they're sore losers. They just hate democracy. They want a system where they always win so they can stay in power. They can further enrich themselves, they can reshape our society. And you're seeing that with Project 2025. They've laid out the playbook. They're telling you exactly what they want to do if Trump gets back in power, and it is a complete overhaul of our political system. So naturally, they have no problem turning a blind eye to the law if that's what their end result is. Tom Cotton could be on Trump's VP shortlist too, which would be horrifying. So I've got a question for you. Do you think Tom Cotton is Trump's VP pick? Or will it be somebody else? Let me know in the comments. Who is your pick for Trump's VP? What's your prediction? Now, let's talk about Trump for a second. Of course, you know he just got convicted of 36 felonies. He has multiple other cases he's dealing with. He is a felon. And of course, there's stigma around that word. That term disenfranchises millions of people across this country. So we do want to be careful with how quickly and easily we throw around the term felon. But of course, Trump is an outlier. He's not going to face the same repercussions. He's not going to be disenfranchised. But despite Republicans doing that disenfranchisement to millions of other people, suddenly Trump is okay. Here he is signing the Law Enforcement for Trump truck.
Oh my God. This is great.
That's a good one.
That's awesome.
A good one. Very good. I had to be careful. I don't want to screw up your truck.
Oh no, that's not screwing up the truck at all.
And of course, cops still support him because he's promising to give them total immunity, or to put it in another way, indemnifying cops.
We're going to do something that I will say is slightly controversial, but it shouldn't be. We are going to indemnify policemen and precincts and states and cities from being sued. We want them to do their job. Our police and law enforcement has to come back, and they want to come back and they want to do their job, and we are going to indemnify them so they don't lose their wife, their family, their pension, and their job. We are going to indemnify policemen and law enforcement, and we're going to tell them to get out. We love you. Do your job.
Now, if you aren't familiar with the term indemnify, it basically means total immunity, to protect somebody. It's easy to get support from law enforcement, even if you are a felon, if you're promising to cover their ass for everything. They can go out there and do whatever they want and face zero consequences. Who wouldn't want that deal? And that totally ignores his attacks on the police, especially after January 6th.
But I think the reason the timeline is so critical here, because going back to your influence, in
Here's
that 3 hours,
posted.
over 140 officers were injured that day.
And a person named Ashley Babbitt was killed.
Yes.
You know what? She was killed, and she shouldn't have been killed. And that thug that killed her, there was no reason to shoot her. At blank range, cold blank range, they shot her. And she was a good person. She was a patriot. There was no reason. There was no reason. And he went on television to brag about the fact that he killed her.
The officer was not bragging about the fact that he killed her.
Suddenly, he's outraged over police brutality. That's where he draws the line over police killings. That's news to me, because if you go back a few years, you'd see this.
And when you see these thugs being thrown into the back of a paddy wagon, you just see them thrown in, rough. I said, please don't be too nice. Like when you guys put somebody in the car and you're protecting their head, you know, the way you put their hand over. Like, don't hit their head, and they've just killed somebody, don't hit their head. I said, you can take the hand away, okay?
And at large, the Republican Party is in firm opposition to even small, meaningful reforms to police behavior. They don't want to support anything that creates a scenario where cops can be held accountable for their actions. The George Floyd Justice and Policing Act would not have solved police brutality, but it would have brought us one step closer, and a step in the right direction. Even that was too far for Republicans. And they will explicitly tell you it's because cops could have been held accountable.
They did not vote for the George Floyd Justice and Policing Act. And did you vote for it, you in Congress?
I wasn't in Congress at the time when that occurred,
You
but
were
I will
not.
tell you
Did you
that the
support
reason
it?
I was not in Congress, I got in 2020.
Did you
No,
support
because
it?
that bill would have gotten rid of qualified immunity. And getting rid of qualified immunity would have meant less officers on the street, which is bad for public safety.
So the only way you would have supported a bill to hold police accountable is if police would not be individually accountable? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah,
They want a system where police are above the law. That's not a justice system. You're just empowering people to be thugs. But who they brutalize matters to Republicans. Because when it comes to January 6th, they're perfectly willing to obstruct justice. They're perfectly willing to help cover the tracks of the people who stormed the Capitol. Take a look.
The release of the January 6th tapes is a critical and important exercise. We want transparency. We should demand that the American people do. We trust, House Republicans trust the American people to draw their own conclusions. They should not be dictated by some narrative and accept that as fact. So they can review the tapes themselves. We're going through a methodical process of releasing them as quickly as we can. As you know, we have to blur some of the faces of persons who participated in the events of that day, because we don't want them to be retaliated against and to be charged by the DOJ and to have other concerns and problems. So
Here's the kicker. They know deep down that Trump is a criminal. They have to pretend like he's not. They have to pretend like the court case was rigged, despite most Americans having faith in a jury trial. You can see the slip from Mike Johnson here.
everybody from around the world to come here, including hardened criminals,
Oh, they're letting hardened criminals in, like this guy. Whoops. All of this underscores the perilous state of our democracy. And admittedly, I think Democrats are a bit hyperbolic on that. They could benefit from toning it down a bit, because I think people are going to be desensitized the more they claim that everything is a threat to democracy. But that said, there are genuine threats to democracy, and this is one of those examples. When you have a political party so closely linked to law enforcement, but creating exceptions for who can break the law, it's not a justice system. And down the line, especially with the implementation of Project 2025, things can get even worse, because then you have the merging of police and corporate power. After they gut regulations and allow corporations to do whatever they want, Good luck protesting against corporate power, because that's the role cops ultimately serve. It's protecting the powerful. When that is codified into our political system, democracy is at risk. Trump's criminal record and court appearances aren't just affecting his election prospects, it's also affecting his marriage. Be sure to check out my recent video that explores how Melania has been notoriously absent on the campaign trail. She wasn't often in the courtroom, and things that were said in testimony could jeopardize their marriage. It's looking like that marriage is not just on the rocks, it could be over very soon. Some of the stuff we found will really surprise you, and it's not looking good, so don't miss that one. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please be sure to like and subscribe so we can keep doing more.